All right, we're going to take a gander at geometric sequences, and all that really means, sounds really fancy, it means that we're going to multiply each term by something to get the next term. That something is called a common ratio, so we're going to use R instead of D for our differences in common differences from arithmetic. So as we take a look here, I have to multiply by 4 and multiply by 4. So keep in mind that I'm using multiply by 4, so that means my new rule is going to be multiply by 4. Here, these numbers are getting smaller, so but remember we have to multiply. So I'm thinking I have to divide it by 2, but that actually means I have to multiply it by 1/2. So R equals 1/2. Sometimes these fractions can be a little bit tricky. So you want to work backwards and say 20 divided by 40 is the same thing as 40 divided by 80, which is the same thing as 80 divided by 160. These are all 1/2, which will give you the rule. Why do I bring it up? Look at the third one. You know what I'm saying? Now, one thing that can help as you transition from a whole number to a fraction is if I put it over 1. So as I did that, you probably thought, oh yeah, well, if I multiply the top by 3 and the bottom by 2, that'll do it. So R happens to be 3 over 2. But if I was stuck and I wasn't sure what's going on, remember I want to take 9/2 and divide it by 3 over 1. That means 9/2 times 1/3, which is 9/6. So that's 3 over 2, which becomes my rule. All right, so if you get stuck, we are working backwards. Capiche? All right. Many things in here are going to look familiar, except for the equation itself. This is how we find a term. But you guys know that I'm going to ask you much more than just that term. I'm going to ask you to find maybe the R value or maybe the N value, which is the term number. The R value is the common ratio. Try to point that out up above there. A sub 1 is the first term. Keep in mind when you get to pre-calc or other classes, they might use just plain old A, signifying it is the first one. All right, so how do we do it? We want the 11th term. So what are the things we know? A sub 1 is 2. N is 11. R is, I don't know, 2 to 8, 8 to 32. That's 4 again. Okay, so these look like the ones from above, so we don't have to think about that. We'll just plug them in. We want the 11th term, so let's go. The first term is 2. The rate is 4. The ratio is 4. And we want 11 minus 1 because that's what's in our formula, n minus 1. All right, you guys know that that's 10, so I'm going to cross that out now. We're not going to write things 500 times here, right? A long, long time ago, I was a kid. I know I don't want to spend too much time rewriting things. So I'm going to do 4 to the 10th and then take that times 2, order of operations. So let's see, what's that going to get us up to? Pretty big number. The 11th term happens to be 2,097,152. That is A sub 11, if you want to keep that hanging on there. So you know, it has some context, you know what it means. All right, next problem we have, same idea, A sub 1. We are using R equals 1/2, and we want N equals 15. So let's plug some things in. A sub 15, 160, we're taking 1/2 to the 15 minus 1 power. Again, I'm going to cross that out right away. Feel free to start writing 14 when you know what you're doing with this stuff. But since it's new, I'm going to at least show that. So you got 1/2 or 0.5 to the 14th power. Remember that's 1/2 caret 14 on your calculator. And then take that times 160. That should be a relatively small number. It's going to get us down to 0.00976 to get our final answer. So that's how we find a term. So that was the first task we had, and we're going to do our best to keep that up. Next thing we have is, all right, so I have a geometric sequence. I just don't know what term number this is, but I know its value. So I'm going to use the formula and find out what n is. So we're going to set it up a little bit backwards. 32,768 equals the very first term, which is 2. The r value we can still figure out. R equals 4 to the n minus 1 power. Notice n's a variable, so I can't simplify that into a number right now. The next thing we're going to do is divide out the 2. Let's get rid of anything extra that we can. So 4 to the n minus 1 power equals 16,000 384. And now I have to pause for just a second and say the variables in the exponent. How do we solve it? Guess and check? Sure, if you want to. I'm not really up for that right now. I'd rather have a mathematical way. What? You said logs? Yes. In this case, I'm going to use the natural log. That brings my n minus 1 down. So I have n minus 1 times the natural log of 4. Let's divide out the natural log of 4. All right, running out of space. N minus 1 on your calculator. Remember, close your parentheses after your 16,384. Close your parentheses. This turns out to be 7. Add the 1. Okay, so this is term number 8. Term number 8 in that sequence. All right, so these are going to be a little more involved, but completely manageable. I wouldn't put it in front of you if I didn't have the confidence that you can do this. All right, working one more time. Term number, I don't know. Term value, 5/16. 5/16. First term, 160. These are going down by a half, right? This is r equals 1/2. 1/2 to the n minus 1 power. All right, this one is going to be a little bit more calculator driven. You knew that because the last one was logs anyway. Divide by 160. All right, so I need 5/16 divided among 160 of my friends. There's not much left there, my friends. All right, we're going to have 1 over 512, 1/2 to the n minus 1. Introduce your old friend, the natural log, and divide by the natural log of 1/2, because we know that this exponent is going to come down. So we're going to divide that out. All right, so n minus 1 should then be equal to 9 to add the 1. So this is the 10th term. 5/16 is the 10th term. That's a result of taking 1/2 of 160 10 times. Wow, that's pretty cool. All right, so that's the same formula, kind of working in different ways. The last way we can do this is to find out what in the world the actual terms in between are. To know that, I'm trying to find out what's R, other than something pirates like to say, R. You know you want to do it. Don't lie. All right. So let's see what we got here. We know this is term 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I know n is 5. We know a sub n, a sub 5 is 256. And we know a sub 1 is 16. So here we go. 256 equals 16 times r to the 5 minus 1 power. Again, we're going to change that right away and make it 4. So you divide out the 16 while we're doing this. And that happens to turn back into a 16. So I have 16 equals r to the 4th power. How do we get rid of the 4th power? I take it to the 1/4. So r turns out to be 2. All right, r is 2. So make sure that we find the terms, right? That's the question. So that means I do have to multiply this to get 32, 64, 128. That was not too bad. All right, term 1, 2, 3, 4. That helps us fill everything in. So we need 160,000 equals 16 times r is what we're after to the 4 minus 1 power. That's 3. Divided by 16. 10,000 equals r to the 3rd power. How do we get rid of the 3rd power? Take it to the 1/3. All right, for the easiest way to write this without too many decimals or anything weird, we're going to say that this is going to be 10 cube root 10. So this is 160 cube root 10. This is 1600 cube root 100. And then in our 4th term, That 100 would give us 300s, 1,000, right? So then it would bump out to be the 1,600. So this is probably a part where it's a little bit weird. If you use the decimal, that's okay, but I wanted to show you, being an honors class, how we're going to work with it when we need to. All right, and the last one I have for you today. I know you're doing a great job. You've been sticking it out. This has been a lot of stuff. A sub 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so those are the things we like to have. 1/16, that's the value. 2, we don't know r, but we know it's going to be 6 minus 1. Kudos to you for still writing that. We know it's 5. Divide by 2. So if I have 1/16 and divide it between two friends, that's 1/32, r to the 5th. And now we have to take that to the 1/5 power. Okay, so parentheses are very important as you put that in your calculator. R equals 2. No, it doesn't. 2's on the bottom. It's 1/2. There we go. That was almost a big whoopsie daisy. All right, so 1/2 of 2 is 1. Half of that is 1/2. Half of that is 1/4. Half of that is 1/8, and half of that's 1/16. Nice, it worked.